It's a great pleasure to me and for me to introduce our speaker today, Dr. Stanislav Kraft, who's going to talk to us about the impacts of pandemic on the global spatial organization of air transportation. And also a timely topic among the rising concerns of the variants of Omicron. Uh, Dr. Kraft is Associate Professor and Transportation Geographer in the Department of Geography at the University of South Bohemia in Czech Republic. His main research area is transport geography, spatial mobility studies, spatial interactions modeling, and settlements and regional systems. He also is the scientific secretary of the National Geographic Society of Czech Republic. He received his PhD in regional geography and regional development from the Maastricht University in 2012. So during this webinar, if you have any questions, please type them or write them down in the Q&A chat box, which is located at the bottom of the Zoom interface, and I will repeat them for you during the Q&A session. You can also using the function called raise your hand, also on the bottom of the Zoom interface, and I will also put you on mark during the session, Q&A session, so you can ask questions directly. So maybe let's welcome Dr. Kraft, and it's all yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for this start. Hello, everyone. Greetings from the Czech Republic. Greetings from Europe, and I'm sending, of course, my regards to all of you in Miami. Welcome to my talk on the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on air transportation. And I hope the connection is good and you can hear my voice. I would like to start by thanking to Hanli for this invitation. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. This lecture was originally supposed to be face-to-face, but unfortunately I had to postpone my visit to Miami because I received a positive PCR test last week before I left. So for this reason, this lecture is being held online, but I'm sure we can make it together. First of all, I would like to apologize for my English. As you can hear, English is not my first language, but I promise I will do my best that you will understand me. I admit it's a great challenge for me to give a lecture in English to you as native speakers. Well, now a few words about me. My name is Stanislav Kraft. I am an associate professor of human geography and research at the University of South Bohemia in the Czech Republic. Our university is located in a beautiful city called České Budějovice. This city is connected with the maybe you know the Czech brewery called Budvar. And it's very similar to Budweiser, which is typical for US. There are some litigations between Budweiser and Czech Budvar, but that doesn't matter now. Our university is rather a smaller university. I think currently there are about 10,000 students studying here now. My research interests are mainly in transportation geography, and you can see, of course, my CV on my website on ResearchGate and so on. My today's talk will focus on a topical and still under research issue called, or namely, how the COVID-19 pandemic affected air transportation. I think it's a very interesting and important topic, and not only for geographers, because many scientific disciplines will or could participate on the research of this issue. a number of studies have been published yet about or concerning this issue, however, most of them were focused on general effects of COVID-19 pandemic. And on the contrary, there were many studies that they were published. They overemphasized the local effects of the pandemic. My approach is a little bit different. My approach is more general, and it seeks the general patterns, spatial patterns of the changes within the air transportation in times of COVID-19. Well, my approach is based on the brand new empirical research. These results they don't have been published yet. So, dear friends, you are the first people in the world to see the brand new results. Just to be sure, is everything okay? Do you hear my voice and see my presentation? Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, here we go. Well, the title of my presentation is Air Transportation in Times of COVID-19, Spatial Organization and Its Changes. There is no doubt that the currently ongoing COVID-19 pandemic is unprecedented global event. Since the end of 2019, our world has changed in many ways, and our lives were changed in many ways. So one of the most significantly affected areas of the COVID-19 pandemic is the air transportation. These are the 4 points of my presentation. The first is to discuss the importance of transportation in contemporary society. It means it's a brief start for my presentation. The second point is to discuss the general impacts of COVID-19 pandemic on air transportation. The core of my presentation is then the third point. I want my talk is then an empirical study of global air transportation. For this study, it means the changes in times of COVID-19. I use the concept of functional regions. It means I study the changing patterns of air transportation through the changes of functional regions. I think that this is a very important geographical or spatial approach to study this issue. And the fourth point, of course, is the last point is the discussion and some conclusions. Well, we can start with a very simple question. What is the role of transport or transportation in today's world? I think it's a very simple question, maybe even a little bit stupid, because all we know that transportation is vital for our society. It's very important, and we can mention transportation as one of the most important human activity. Every day, each of us participates in the process called spatial mobility. We need to move across the space, and our world is really connected with the spatial mobility. It means it is for this reason that people do not find everything they want or need in their surroundings, so they are forced to move across the space. What is very important that spatial mobility, it means the movements of people, goods, and information, and capital, and so on, are typical at all hierarchical scales in the world. It means from the local scale to the global one. We are moving across the space, and this is very important for our society and for our world. Mobility has been significantly paralyzed by the COVID-19 pandemic. All we know, but still we can say it is a very important and significant human activity, despite these restrictions during the COVID pandemic and so on. Well, Similarly, we can assess that air transportation is very important and vital for our world and our society. It is one of the most important transportation modes, ensuring transport relations over very long distances. This is the basic aspect of the air transportation. This transportation mode, it means air transportation, underpins the global transport links. It is very important. It supports globalization processes and so on. This figure shows the intensity of air traffic in 2014. It means it's a little bit older, but I think it's very important to assess these elements or these data for our spatial or geographical analysis. This figure shows the number or maybe the movements of aircrafts in the world during one day. It means it is 24-hour period in the world, and each line represents one aircraft moving from point A to point B. This picture shows the intensity and the importance of air transportation for our world. Because all of us are geographers, I think it is very important to assess the spatial arrangement of these transport links. It means we study the spatial differences, of course, in geography, and we can say there are three main cores of air transportation in the world: North America, Europe, and Eastern Asia. It means this is the global course of air transportation, of economic activities, of population, and so on. And this is very important because on the contrary, we can see that there are some parts of the world, they are not so strongly integrated into the global system of air transportation. For example, South Africa or the whole Africa, South America, central parts of Asia, and so on. It is logical that there are differences, but these inequalities are very important for assessing the transportation in the world. So for this reason, we can talk about the great importance maybe of geographical or spatial approaches to assess the air transportation and so on. Well, here are some crucial key aspects of air transportation. All we know that it is one of the youngest and one of the most dynamical transportation mode. It's focused on transportation of people and goods on medium and especially very long distances. And this is very important because air transportation really underpins the global transport relations. Of course, air transportation has a very important and very high environmental impacts. But from the geographical or spatial point of view, it's very important to mention that there were some processes during a few last decades that changed the spatial arrangement of air transportation. For example, the concentration of air transportation, it means aircrafts and air transportation links into the hubs. It means there are some very important airports in the world, like Atlanta, like Chicago, like New York, like Los Angeles, in Europe, for example, London, and so on. They are forced to be airline hubs. It means this spatial concentration of the air transportation links were during the last decades one of the most important and changes in the spatial organization of air transportation. And of course, there are many other processes like development of low-cost airlines, like, for example, Southwest Airlines in the United States in 1970s, creating of airline alliances, and so on. It means these processes maybe shaped for a very long time changes or the spatial arrangement of air transportation. And of course, last but not least, we can mention that air transportation is very vulnerable transportation modes to many various external influences. Well, this slide shows the dynamic development of air transportation over the last few decades, or maybe since the Second World War. As you can see, air transportation was, or the development was very dynamic since, or in the 21st century. But for example, yet from the 1970s, you can see some increasing of passenger carried by air transportation. We can say that there are some major internal and external factors influencing this development. For example, if we mention the external factors, it means it's a relatively favorable economic situation in the world, development of tourism, and so on, and many other processes that shaped or influenced positively the development of air transportation. But there are, of course, also the internal factors. It means the internal factors within the air transportation industry. It means liberalization or the deregulation of air transportation, or more fuel-efficient aircrafts, and so on. However, what can we observe? We can observe that the general development of air transportation has been slowed down during some certain points or periods, like oil crisis, Iraq war, Gulf crisis, and so on. It is clear, however, that there has always been a slowdown, temporarily, maybe slow down in the development of air transportation, which has been compensated by large increases in next years, in subsequent years. It means, for example, the terrorist attack and so on. It's only a slowdown of air transportation as the global transport mode. The COVID-19 pandemic is different. It's completely different. It's unprecedented intervention in the air transportation and its development in the world. Well, now maybe we will now turn to a completely different issue, because as I have mentioned, my approach is based on the assessment of functional regions, of delimitation and assessment of functional regions. So now only a few words, a few theoretical words about regions, and especially functional regions, because they are very important for us now. Generally, we can say, and all of us are geographers, so probably you know that there are a few types of regions, but generally we can say there are two main types of regions: formal regions and functional regions. While the formal regions are typical, or maybe more typical for physical geography, because they work with homogeneous structures and so on, and they are formed mainly by vertical relations. Functional regions are different. They are organized by relations, by spatial relations, by spatial interactions, and so on. So the functional regions are different, and maybe we can say they are more typical for human geography. Probably all we know that the basic type maybe of functional regions are the nodal regions. It means regions, they are organized through the flows to specific nodal nodes within the regions. Typical types of nodal regions are, for example, travel to work areas or daily urban systems, commuting to work regions, and so on. It is very important to mention that I work with the term functional regions. It means I'm trying to delimitate or define functional regions based on the data from air transportation. Sorry, I'm back. Well, what is very important in a theoretical basis of functional regions, there are of course, some rules how to delimitate, how to define the functional regions. And the first and maybe the most important principle is the regional autonomy principle. It means when defining functional regions, the rule is that the internal flows within the functional regions should be more important and stronger than the external flows. It means from the region to another regions and so on. This is the regional autonomy principle, and it is very important to mention it because it's very important for our research and for the results. Well, if we define or delimitate the functional regions, we have to or the typical features of functional regions are internal coherence of regions. It means these internal flows are more important within the region, and the external closure. It means the closeness of the region, which is very important to the autonomy and maybe the existence of the functional regions and so on. As you can see that the functional regions can be or are maybe different, or there are many forms of the functional regions, and the character maybe of the relations within the region are different. Random regions or random interactions, oriented interactions, channeled, circular, and the point E, nodal, are very typical, and I think the most common interactions that shapes the functional regions. It means node. There is one node, one core within the region, one or more core within the region, and the other parts of the region are attached maybe by the intensity of spatial interactions to one or more cores. It is very important to mention that the nodal regions should be with one core, but very often they are functional or nodal regions with more cores. It means it's a multiple core regions. Well, and this is the main and basic point for my research. It means I have the air transportation. I know that there are a few movements, a few interactions. They are supported or based on air transportation on one hand, and on the other hand, I have the functional regions with all the principles like regional autonomy and so on. And my approach is based on merging or connecting these two elements into one structure, maybe. So, what about the previous research? I have a little advantage because me and my colleagues we published a few studies on this issue earlier. This study is from 2020. It was published in the Geographical Journal, and it's based on the data from 2014. So we had a database about movements of aircrafts among all civil airports in the world from 2014. It's only one day. It means it's only a snapshot, only 1 day snapshot of this state. But we used this data for delimitate the global regions. We can see on this picture, on this map, the intensity of movement of aircrafts among all civil airports in the world. As you can see, we can confirm there are three main global cores of air transportation. It means North America, Europe, and Eastern Asia, and they are very strongly interconnected. It means within the systems of North America, Europe, and so on. And of course, each other with the other are interconnected too. So, and also we can confirm that there are some peripheral regions that they are not so strongly integrated into this system, like South America, like Africa, and like many other parts of Asia. Next point, what is very important, and what maybe a little bit, I was a little bit surprised of the interconnection between Europe and North America. As you can see, the intensity of this movement of aircrafts between North America and Europe is much more stronger than between, for example, North America and Asia, or for example, between Europe and Eastern Asia. The third point, what is very important, that is this space maybe between Europe and Eastern Asia. It means there are a few airports, like for example Dubai in United Arab Emirates, or for example Istanbul in Turkey, or India, and so on. It is a very interesting space because there are maybe some fights between or among these regions or airports of the sphere of influence in this area. Well, we had this database, or it was of course much richer, this database. I think, in my opinion, there were 67,000 interactions. It means 67,000 flights among these among 3,000 airports in the world. It means it is from the year 2014. And we had this database, and we used some regular approach to define the functional regions. It means this is the results of the previous study. We have used some interaction measures to delimitate, to define the global regions. And this is the result. We find out there are 11 systems of airports in the world, and they are interconnected, and so on. Each region fulfills the criteria of regional autonomy. It means they are interconnected, and the internal flows are much more stronger than the external flows. For example, if we focus our attention on America, we can say there are three main systems. The first and maybe the largest system is the red system, is shaped by very strong airports in the central and eastern part of the United States. And the busiest airport here is Atlanta. No surprise, of course, no surprise. But this is the first system, and very strong and very stable system. The second is around the LAX. It means the western part of the USA. This yellow system with a few airports, and Los Angeles LAX was the busiest airport here. South America was not so weak, maybe. Sorry, not so strong, but it's a region with Sao Paulo as the leading maybe airport in South America. It means it's not a typical nodal region. It means it doesn't mean that Sao Paulo is the only hub or the main hub in the system, within the system. It means these airports are interconnected very well, and they are very intensively interconnected. And Sao Paulo is the busiest airport. It's the greatest or the busiest airport. Maybe the situation in Europe is more difficult and more interesting, because Europe maybe is divided into 2 or 3 systems. The leading position in Europe was in 2014 by London Heathrow as the global and leading hub in Europe. But the second was Paris in France as the second most important system. As you can see, this I don't know, it's not pink, it's violet maybe color, that the system of Paris and this functional region is typical for France, for Spain, and for many other airports in Africa, in Western Africa, and so on. It means they are former colonies of France from the 19th and 20th century. So these airports in Africa, in Western Africa, are still connected, especially with Paris and with these airports. And then Moscow in Russia, it seems it is very close within the Russian Federation. It means almost all Russian airports are connected within one system. This is very interesting. And next, I know that the time is running out, but I can mention, for example, Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. As you can see, this is the pink color. You can see that this is very interesting and very successful airport, I think, because the sphere of influence is typical for not for the Middle East maybe, but also for southern or eastern parts of Africa. It means these airports are connected with Dubai. Dubai is a novice maybe in this category, and so on. Time is running out, so I will switch to another slides, because the purpose of my talk is current situation and not the historic situation. So this is the previous study, and this is the results that we wanted to maybe make with or based on this data from pre-COVID era and COVID era. It means from 2019 and 2020. Yes, there are some structural features. It is also from the previous study, but as you can see, there are at least London Heathrow and Atlanta, it means that the European and the American systems are the most important, are the busiest in the world. Almost 200 airports are within these systems. And I can mention and point out the last column in this table. It's called self-containment. It's a measure for closeness of the region. Why? For example, as you can see, the highest self-containment is typical for Sao Paulo. It means the system of airports within South America, and they are very close within one unit. Conversely, for example, Paris or Los Angeles, they are very open. It means the self-containment is very low, and it means they are opened. They are opened and they connect maybe not only airports within its area, but also with other airports and systems over the world. Yes, this is the last picture from the previous study, I promise. This is the schematic, I don't know, visualization of world airline hubs. What is very important, we find out that Atlanta, as the busiest airport in the world, is not a typical world airline hub. Maybe this is shocking information for you, but one of the most important criterion for delimitation of world airline hubs or world airline hub airports was the share of long-haul flights. It means long-haul flights. We found out that Atlanta had, I think, 7 or 8%, only 7 or 8% of long-haul flights to serve. It means Atlanta is very strong and very busy airport, but it serves mainly as a hub within the system in North America. So we delimited, or we find out that there are 5 main global airline hubs: New York, London, Paris, Dubai, and Tokyo. All of them, the share, for example, of long-haul flights were above 40 or 50%. It means this is completely different comparing with Atlanta. Well, let's move to the current research and to this brand new results that they are based on this period, means 2019 and 2020. Well, some information about data and methods. We worked with another database. The previous research, as I have mentioned, was based on data of movement of aircrafts. It means how many aircrafts flew from point A to point B. But this time we used another database. It's from ICAO, and it's called On Flight Origin and Destination. It means it's about passengers. How many passengers flew from Tokyo to I don't know, to Kuala Lumpur, for example. And this is maybe more correct for delimitation of functional regions. Well, we had number of all passengers among all civil airports over the world in 2019 and 2020. 2019 was a year of the pre-COVID era. And as you can see, there are more than 28,000 interactions. It means city from one city to another city. And there are more than 2,000 cities in this database. 2020, the situation was more complicated. It was, of course, influenced by the COVID-19 pandemic, and there was some decrease, and there are only 17,000 interactions. It means city versus city, and above 1,700 cities. There is the SMARTS interaction measure. which we used for delimitate of this region, of these regions. I think it's a advanced method based on spatial interaction modeling. Maybe you know that there are some gravity models in geography, and this model is an advanced method how to delimitate the regions. It means it works with the internal and external flows. It means with the regional autonomy and with the regional principle. So this is the smart interaction measure, and this interaction measure we used for analyzing this data. Well, let's move to the main results. This is the situation in 2019. It means pre-COVID pandemic. We find out that our previous research was the situation is similar to the situation in 2014, and compared with a different, of course, database. We find out that the situation in 2019, we can say there are 10 systems in the world, and they shaped maybe this airline or the moving of passengers through the air transportation. The greatest system, or the largest system, maybe is the Atlanta system, as you can see, the blue color, which is very important for this southeast part of the United States, and for whole typical for whole Latin America. And it means this system is also interconnected in one system. And Atlanta, of course, is the busiest airport, or was in 2019 the busiest airport in the world. The second system is called New York, of course, and it's shaped by the airports in the north eastern part of the United States. And as you can see, some Caribbean airports are very well connected with New York and its airports, because we know that there are a few airports in New York. And the last system is shaped by Los Angeles. It means these central part and the western coast, sorry, of the United States are interconnected in one system. So maybe, again, no surprise, but compared to the previous research, we can mention that Sao Paulo and the whole region of South America is connected with in one system with Atlanta, and this is I don't know, Miami, of course, as you can see, and so on. And this situation in Europe is maybe similar, or maybe yes, it's similar, but there is only one system within maybe the most of Europe, and its busiest airport is in London. What is maybe a little bit surprising is the situation in Istanbul, in Turkey. As you can see, this red color, we can say that Istanbul, as a very good or very advanced global hub, makes some successful operations here. And as you can see, even some airports in Europe and in Africa are connected within this systems, within this system. Then, of course, another airports. For example, Istanbul is, of course, made or shaped by Turkish Airlines. Turkish Airlines as one of the most dynamical airlines in the world. Of course, Addis Ababa in Ethiopia is made by Ethiopian Airlines. It means these strong airlines supports maybe the development of these systems and these apps. Also, it is typical for Dubai as Emirates and Etihad Airways and so on. So this is the situation in 2019. And if we switch to the very critical year of 2020, so you can see the main changes. I can switch it a few times. 2019, 2020, 2019, 2020. Again, a few comparisons. This is what is made, or what was made within the system of air transportation. What is very important, for example, if you concentrate on the size of airports, it means, of course, it correlates with the number of passengers, carried passengers. We can compare that there are the American airports are influenced by the COVID-19 relatively very low, or on a low level. It means they are, of course, they are decreasing. All of them are decreasing, but this decrease is not so important and not so strong like in other areas in the world. For example, if you watch the changes in Europe or in Asia, this is interesting, I think. Well, what changes are there? If you can see, in 2020 there is only one system in North America, and it's with a leading airport in Atlanta. It seems that it's only thinking, but it seems that these national restrictions and closure of or lockdown, maybe, and closure of the internal borders, it seems that America, with some airports from Caribbean area and Mexico and so on, are within one system. As you can see, these changes in South America, that this system of Atlanta here and here dropped out or was destroyed, and these airports in South America were within one particular system of Sao Paulo in Brazil. Maybe completely different situation was in Europe. There is, for example, in the United States, there is some unifying in one unit called Atlanta region, but in Europe there are two main systems: London Heathrow or London again, and very strong position of Amsterdam in Netherlands. Amsterdam Schiphol, maybe it's a rather smaller but very important airport here. Also, Turkey is a little bit stable, and if you concentrate on Africa, you can see that Addis Ababa and many airports in Africa are again connected within one system with Dubai, because Dubai and especially the Emirates Airlines made, of course, some restrictions during the 2020. During the COVID-19 pandemic, but they still made these connections for maybe it was relatively stable. If you concentrate, for example, on Australia, you can see similar tendency, that there is new region, new system with Sydney and a few airports within Australia were connected in one unit, again within the state or internal borders of Australia and so on. Well, I think the time is running up, so I don't want to be boring, and as I have mentioned, and I have to apologize for it. These results are very fresh, maybe because these maps were made yesterday, so it's very fresh, this state. So I can maybe, yes, I can make some conclusions and very briefly say about the main changes for me. Of course, again, we can conclude that there were substantial changes in air transportation under the influence of COVID-19. Many studies declared that there is significant decline in air transportation performance between 2019 as a year of maximum mobility and maximum development of air transportation, and 2020, which was the worst year maybe in the modern history for air transportation. But in my point of view, it is very important to assess not only these, absolute data and absolute changes, but also the relative changes and the internal or structural changes in spatial organization of air transportation. What can we say or conclude? We can conclude that there was a significant breakdown in the functional structure of the air transportation links. It means there were in 2019 there were some stable functional regions, and we can suppose that they were relatively stable in history. And now this situation is different. Not completely different, but partially it's different, because some states made some restrictions, and they were closed in one systems, in one maybe in one state borders and so on. Some world regions have been isolated, like for example Australia or again South America. It means these changes were very strongly influenced these internal structures of these systems. In contrast, some regions have been integrated into a single entity. For example, North America, as we watched in this map, that North America was unified maybe in one system. The strategies of individual carriers were clearly influenced by state restrictions. It means the state restrictions during the COVID-19 pandemic, and it seems that the current situation is very similar in 2021, where unprecedented interventions in the functional structure of air transportation. I think, and at least for me, it's an interesting research topic, and the next step is of course to analyze 2021. Well, 60 minutes, just 60 minutes. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm ready for discussion and your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have. Can I go first? Jose, do you have any questions? I cannot hear you.
Yeah, I have questions, but go ahead.
Okay, cool. Can you just go back to this like functional regions, like the 10 functional regions you classified for 2019? Why you classify like this 10? Why 10 is like?
Sorry.
Why you only 10 classifications, 10 groups, 10 functional regions?
Yes, because the smart interaction measure it's a typical quantitative method, and the criteria are the closeness of the region. So you have to write some line or border of closeness of the regions, and we used the same criteria as here in 2014.
Okay.
You know, okay. So despite these data are different because passengers and then were the aircraft, but we used the same criteria to use it and to try to delimitate these regions.
Is that impossible to like separate the domestic lines and international lines and just redo this like functional regional analysis? Maybe like for international lines, just a different type of functional origins. For domestic lines, just another story. Is that possible?
Yes, no, we didn't differ the domestic and the international flights because you know in this time it's very complicated to differ because all of these passengers can use these flights or even domestic or international, so it's combined together.
I guess just separate to different groups maybe help to deliver your story, like the changing of functional origins.
Yes, as I mentioned, it's a very fresh data and results for me. So maybe I need some time to understand all of these elements, and of course and at least for example when I will prepare the paper. So this would be perfect. So sorry, it's really brand new research. So,
And I have two questions from Professor Stoller. The first one is about like what are the prospects of linking this data to economic data to understand the consequences of maybe new regionalization patterns. Can I say this? Just in the chat box. The question from Professor Justin Stoller.
Yes, what are the prospects of linking these data to economic data? Understand the consequences. Maybe I'm not able to answer now because yes, I think it's of course it's connected with this economic situation, but it was really very different and very complicated during the 2020 because it was or some restrictions and so on were made very dramatically and so on. But these data economic understand consequences of new regionalization patterns. It's hard to say now for me. So this is maybe this is the answer. And might these new patterns have implications for air pollution or other local environmental effects? Wow. Thank you very much. This is a very interesting question. I hope so, because it must correlate with these data are about moving passengers, and it must correlate with the movement of aircrafts. So I'm convinced that these environmental effects have, or these effects and these changes, even these data are, or this approach is a little bit different, because it's not about the absolute data, it's about relative data. But as you can see, from these pictures, there are some declines of passenger traffic on particular airports. So maybe there are some implication, but this air pollution or local environmental effects are yes, it's a good question, and for maybe for a few future research. Thank you.
Okay.
Stella, I have a question.
Okay.
One, it's in the beginning of your presentation, you talk about formal regions and functional regions. Okay. Okay. I think formal regions, if you assume that formal regions are political regions defined by law, that's a good way to start. And functional regions are regions that are defined by flows. And sometimes the functional regions, they are the same than the formal regions, but sometimes they are not.
That's true.
So let's start with that.
Okay.
And based on your data set, what I saw was before the pandemic, the formal regions didn't match the functional regions. Okay. You could see that, for example, United States, that's a formal region. There was 3 different functional regions, and each one of these functional regions had a different dynamic. I think it's the same in other parts of the world.
Okay.
And what I see happening during the pandemic is that the functional regions match the formal regions.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Because of the national laws, the national constraints that have been put in order to control the pandemic. So I think if you do this kind of analysis, to try to define formal regions and compare with functional regions and see how they change over time, maybe that's a way to go. And I think it's going to be easy to explain all the different changes that that in some way is connected to the policies that the countries use to constrain the expansion of COVID.
Okay.
What do you think about that?
I don't know, but maybe you are right. It's an interesting point of view, because I always think about or only functional regions, but that's true that these types, 2 types of regions, maybe on this data set should be unifying or merging. So it's interesting. Thank you.
Okay. So just last one question, actually. I'm just curious about what about geography status right now in Czech, in Eastern European countries? So I'm just curious about the status of geography, the discipline of geography in Czech, actually, in the Eastern European countries. So can you just introduce a little bit about like your National Society of Czech, how many members you have? Do you have any like issues or problems for like recruiting students, just telling them what is geography? Do you have like...
Okay. So you mean the Czech Geographical Society?
Yes.
Okay.
And actually the status of geography in like education system of Czech.
Okay, so maybe maybe we can talk later about face to face, but I can mention some points. Well, the Czech Geographical Society, we have approximately only 500 members, but we can say that in the Czech Republic, it's it's the oldest association, scientific association, because it was founded in 1894. It means, and since that time, it is the oldest scientific company, maybe or association here in the Czech Republic. And since that time, we publish journal called Geography in Czech, Geografie. And it's on Web of Science, so maybe you can watch or see it or watch the website of it. And the second part of the question, I think it's for a long discussion maybe about geography and in Central or Eastern Europe. I still feel it's a little bit different from for example, US or French or British geography, because for a very long time it was shaped by the communist regime. It means during the second half of the 20th century. So some topics and some approaches were eliminated, I think. For example, I don't know, environmental approaches in geography or time geography. It was not so common. But the socialist or communist geography, because we had a great pattern with in Russian geography or Soviet geography, so it was very strongly influenced and focused on economic issues. So economic geography was for a very long time had a leading position within the Czech and all other socialist or post-socialist geographies.
Thank you.
Okay.
I guess that will be all for today's program.
Okay, I hope I will visit Miami next week, but there is a new restriction since because I have rebooked my flight on 7th December, but since the 6th December there is a new rule because of the Omicron or I don't know the pronunciation of the new variant of coronavirus. So I hope I will go to Miami next week.
Good luck with
see.
it.
We'll see. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Stanislav. Wonderful.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It was very great and kind for me to be here. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you all for coming and joining us. All right. I guess that can be.
Okay. So see you next week, hopefully. Thank you very much. So see you. Bye.